everybody, welcome to Scarpad's Comic Treks. And today we're going to be looking at a sequel to a comic book that we recently reviewed and took a look at. That was Star Trek X-Men from Paramount and Marvel Comics. And that comic was with the original crew of the Starship Enterprise during the 5-year mission, and looked back at the original pilot, Where No Man Has Gone Before, with Kirk's friend Gary Mitchell. And that video is on my site, so make sure you go take a look at that one. And I like that comic. I thought it was a very good mashing of the X-Men and Star Trek, and I thought the story was excellent and the artwork was excellent. Well, today we're going to look at 1998's sequel to that comic book, and this time it's going to be Star Trek The Next Generation and the X-Men. So this comic came out in 1998, a couple of years after the original one came out. And it featured a slightly different version of the X-Men team than what was originally in the original comic book. Wolverine, Storm, Angel, Nightcrawler, Kitty Pryde, Colossus, Banshee, Kang the Conqueror. Even had the Sentinels in it, so it was upping the game a little bit. And the bad guy superhero team, the Thunderbolts. So a little slightly different configuration for the X-Men and Star Trek crew. And of course we have the Next Generation crew. So how will this story fare compared to the original? Well, we got a whole different cast and crew. We have a whole different writer. Dan Abnett wrote this book, and it was the artwork is a little bit different. Whereas that book, the original one, was a lot of different artists contributing to various pages. This one has Eddington, Nord, and Koblish mainly contributing to the art and the inking throughout the book. That book was a 30th anniversary special. This one was a sequel to that. So I'll start off by saying I didn't like this book as much as the original. And I'll give my opinion of it in the wrap-up at the end. But this book takes place, or this comic takes place in the Next Generation timeline right after the events of Star Trek First Contact, the motion picture. So when we pick up with a story where at the end of that movie, where the Enterprise has just successfully saved the Federation and Earth from assimilation in the past by the Borg, and has allowed first contact with the Vulcans to occur, setting the timeline straight. And at the end of that movie, the Starship Enterprise E is heading back to Federation time and space when the movie ends. And that's where this comic picks up. As we can see here in the first page, Data is still half a Data. His head is still kind of peeled back from what the Borg Queen did to him in that motion picture. And what happens is the Enterprise gets pulled out of the time slipstream before they arrive back to the 24th century. And they conclude that they're on Earth, and it's the 1990s. And it's a nice artwork here with the Enterprise E. And it's nice because we don't get too many comics, we don't get too many things in this timeline after the First Contact and before Nemesis. So basically what's happening is they get together and they discover that they are on around Earth, but it seems to be a different time period, 1990, judging by the pollution in the air, where we heard that before. And they decide they're going to go ahead and beam down to try to discover what's going on Earth at this time. And, Data tells them that they make sure that they dress appropriate for the period so that they don't stand out. So they're going to split into two different teams. We're going to see Riker, Crusher, and Worf beam down. I think Worf's Captain America t-shirt there and hat and jeans. They're all rocking the 1990s era clothes. and they beam down and they find themselves in front of what is, according to the computer, the Baxter Building. And the Baxter Building is where the Fantastic Four and the Marvel Universe usually hang out. And they're met by a team of people in costumes. I guess these guys are the Thunderbolts. I didn't read too much X-Men back in the day here, but I guess the gist of this is that this is a team of rogue superhero villains that are looking to dominate the world. And Riker says here we may have to rethink our tactics here. And one of the things that I like about this book is it does jump around a bit. From this scene here, the next time we see these three individuals on the bridge with no explanation of what happened here, what came out of this confrontation with the Thunderbolts, you don't know, and you never find out. So that's really a bit odd. So inside the X-Men compound in Westchester, basically is where the other team beams down with Data, and this is the X-Men basically lounging around on a Sunday and just kind of hanging out and doing their X-Men best. We get Wolverine and Nightcrawler there, and basically we're getting a team of LaForge, Data, and Troy. And one thing I have to say at this point is the artwork in this book is nowhere near as good. It's very inconsistent. It varies so much from panel to panel with the same team. I'm not a fan of this artwork in the least. In fact, the artwork in the original X-Men book with the original Star Trek crew was much, much better than what we're seeing here. So they're trying to sneak into the compound here, and that's not working out too well because the first thing they met with is with Wolverine. And Wolverine is threatening Geordi, and Data steps up to, of course, going to have a fight, much like we had the Kirk Wolverine fight in the first book. We're getting the Wolverine Data fight. I take it back. I mean the Spock Wolverine fight. Now we're seeing Data substitute in his place, so we have another semi-powerful Star Trek character that can take on Wolverine. And interesting thing is, in both these books, Wolverine gets kind of pushed around. I think Wolverine probably stands his ground a little bit better with Data and with Spock. I guess if he's trying to be non-lethal, then maybe he might get thrown around a little bit. And of course, things really go out when the giant shows up here. And Data says, "Curious, a man with claws and now a metal giant. That was most unexpected." So, after the fight, we get a scene here. They get together and they get Captain Picard into the mix. And I love this little scene from Captain Picard here. And this little panel where it says, "Captain James Tiberius Kirk, my most illustrious predecessor. It seems the man made a habit of popping up where he was least expected." Well, isn't that exactly what Picard's doing here? And what he does most often. So he's got to throw some shade here at the captain, and I'm not sure if that was quite warranted. So they have a soiree here in the X-Men in the compound, and basically they're talking about, one of the things that they talked about earlier, and they're going a little bit here, is that they beamed down to the 1990s, and they were expecting to see the eugenic wars. Well, where are the eugenic wars? They're supposed to be taking place in the 1990s. I do like the way they handle this because obviously that never happened, and even the TV shows have pushed off the eugenic wars into later dates because, of course, the original series in the 60s had it set in the future of 1990, but we all know that didn't happen. So they basically conclude that, not only did they move backward in time, but they've kind of moved sideways to another dimension, and of course, Worf, who's gone through his own adventure with parallel universes in the original Next Generation series, doesn't like parallel universes whatsoever. So they decide, this is a parallel universe. Eugenic wars, didn't happen here. And they filled the crew in about what happened last time they met up with James T. Kirk and how to save the galaxy. So basically, at this point, Troy gets a feeling, and that's what happens with Troy. Unfortunately, Troy's written very badly in most of these comics, and it kind of goes back to the way Troy was written in the first season of The Next Generation before they figured out what to do with her character, where she's got great feelings and she's feeling the aliens, and basically that's all she was used for, is for her feelings. So here she gets another feeling, and that's right before Kang the Conqueror stops down, and Kang, who's a villain here, is saying that he's going to help this time because basically the entrance of the Starship Enterprise has disrupted the parallel universes, and that bits and pieces of everyone is shifting around, and that they need to go on a mission to try to fix this before it destroys both timelines. So what Kang tells them he's going to do is he's going to give them a set of 8 chronometer devices. It's going to send the 2 teams, to the various points of the anomalies so they can fix the time problem, the time anomalies. And they begrudgingly say, well, we have to do this. We're going to trust them this time, even though both teams don't trust Kang at the least. So meanwhile, we're going to go back up to the Enterprise here, and this is what doesn't make sense. The last time we saw most of the crew, they were confronting those villains, and now all of a sudden they're just back to the Enterprise, and you don't know what happened. So that's a bit of writing that seems like a chunk of the story went out and went missing. So both crews prepare to take on their mission and to be dispatched. And what happens is the crew led by Picard is beamed down to post-atomic horror 1990s, kind of what was discussed by Q in the original episode of Encounter at Farpoint. And here they meet, I guess, a bunch of mutants who are left at the site, and they have a little battle with the mutants. And that goes on for several pages, and they trade some quips back and forth. And I guess that's an interesting thing, is the original crossover didn't feel so much like a comic book. This one definitely has more of a comic book trope to it. You get the banter back and forth during the fight scenes. And it really felt to me that if you took out the Star Trek crew in this book, you could have really merged any Marvel property or any TV show, and the result kind of would have been the same. And it didn't feel that way back in the original book. So that's why I have to give it several marks down for that. And then we find out basically what's happening is the Sentinels, all-powerful beings in the Marvel Universe, is going to destroy them because of the timeline incursions. Meanwhile, the other team, led by Worf and Data, beam onto a Miranda-class starship where the next anomaly is, and they encounter the Borg on the ship. And Data says this is kind of strange because where they are, which is the Battle of Wolf 359, which is the big battle that happened in Best of Both Worlds, during that timeline, they never had Borgs beamed onto the ship. So something has changed here, obviously, that these timeline incursions are changing things. So they have a battle here, and once again, we get the same type of witty banter that we would get in a normal superhero book, back and forth as Worf and Wolverine battle the Borg. And that happens for several pages. They do defeat the Borg, and then basically we shift back over to the planet with Picard and the Sentinels, and we get yet another battle. So a lot more battling in this book, whereas the original X-Men Star Trek crossover kind of really went into depth, with the characters of Kirk feeling despair over killing Gary Mitchell, and how that all wraps into the X-Men's mantra of saving and protecting mutants, and how Kirk's feelings toward the mutants is coloring that whole mission. This one doesn't really get into that depths. We got a lot more of just the superhero battles, and they're good. I mean, it's an entertaining book for sure, especially as we see the various teams dismantle the Sentinels here, which they do kind of easily, actually. The Sentinels should be a lot more of a formidable presence than they are in this book. So at this point, we beam over to Kang's ship, Kang the Conqueror, and we discover in some exposition that this mission that he sent both crews on is nothing but a ruse, and that what they're going to do is not going to save the timelines, but are going to destroy them. And this is where the book really gets some points knocked off for me. For the Dusha Machina, which is, at that point, they go back to the Enterprise, and who pops in to give the solution to the whole problem here? You got it. Wesley Crusher, good old West, and the Traveler. They're back from traveling. They got new little costumes. For the record, I never liked this whole 7-season storyline in the Next Generation, where the great Wesley Crusher, who could fix anything magically on the ship, now became a god or a traveling, a wise man that could go with and explore the universe and set everything right. And that's what they're doing in this story. They come down. The Traveler is back with Wesley, and Wes and Beverly's really happy to see him after a few years, and Wesley, starts saying that basically we detected what this plan was all along, and we followed Kang here, and you're not gonna, you can't follow his mission, or you're gonna destroy the universe. There would have been, to me, there had to be a better way to handle this than bringing Wes and his buddy in. It really, to me, it does what Wes did in all those stories in Next Generation's early seasons, which is the crew looked inept. He would always come in and solve the problem, and they'd be telling him to shut up, or they'd be, Riker would be, doesn't want to go sit down over there, rest. We don't want to listen to your solution. And then he comes in to save the day, and they look like idiots. I mean, I hated that. I hated the dumbing down of the Next Generation crew in the expense of Wesley Crusher. Wes was handled a lot better once he went off to Starfleet and he got on his first missions. And those stories are great because they put him on an even footing, or maybe a little, he shouldn't be on an even footing. He should be a little bit below Captain Picard and the crew, a lot below it. And it did do that and knocked him down several pegs. And that's what needed to be done. And I think they undid all that when they made him a traveler. So I never liked this storyline, and it cheapens this comic book as well, because now, they can get the whole situation solved. So we go back to the Miranda, and we got Sisko and crew basically battling the Wolf 359 battle. And now Wesley the Traveler comes down and, informs the team that basically what they're going to do by following Kang is going to destroy the universe, and they shouldn't do it. So that basically, at that point, Kang appears, says, "Yeah, I was fooling you. You don't listen to me. I'm going to destroy the universe, but that's what I'm doing. I'm a villain, So after all that, basically, they end up defeating Kang. Interesting thing is we do have get a little cameo from Tasha Yar, but it doesn't really amount to much. She's there in the streets of post-atomic New York, which doesn't really make too much sense because she was never there. I mean, she was on her planet at this point, so that didn't make any sense at all. So we get some more battles between them and the Sentinels. There's another death of Tasha Yar again, which really goes nowhere. And, after more, Sentinel battle, which we kind of saw in the other pages, we're just seeing it again. the story more or less ends on battles. We get everybody battling, and they defeat Kang and the Sentinels, and that basically is that. Kang, goes off on his own, gets blown up, and then we get the splash pages at the end. Everybody says goodbye. Thanks for stopping by, and then we're gone. And then this is the next point where the book really falls down. The nice thing about Star Trek X-Men is it all stood on its own. It was a standalone story. You could read it, even if you weren't reading X-Men, and it was a hell of a read. This book picks up after X-Men continuity previously, and this book ends up at the very last page with them beaming down and the stories being concluded in Star Trek The Next Generation X-Men novel. So this doesn't end. It's a second act of a novel that, you have to go track down and buy. And that's very unsatisfying. So I just didn't like the way this story ended. And let's just wrap things up. Star Trek X-Men Next Generation, definitely nowhere near as good as the original book. I would say it's entertaining in its fight scenes. If you're a big X-Men fan, a big Star Trek fan, and you love the battles where they get in and they trade quips back and forth and they fight. That's basically what this book is. Nothing more. It has some very tired tropes with using Wesley to solve the problem, and it feels like it's the middle adventure of something that you're not going to see the end of because you may not have the novel and you may not be in the X-Men continuity to know where it started up. So overall, I'd say give this one a pass. If you can pick up any of the books, I would definitely pick up the original Star Trek X-Men crossover. It's much better written. The artwork is better. And it doesn't rely on a lot of those typical comic book tropes. So I hope you enjoyed this look at Star Trek The Next Generation X-Men from Marvel and Paramount. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and share if you like this video. And leave your comments down below. If there's anything else you'd like to see me review or like to see me talk about in these videos, I will certainly do that. I'm going to be looking at a lot of different things. Eventually, we're going to be looking at Star Trek Picard. I want to wait for the first 3 episodes of that to debut, and then we'll do a little mini review of the first 3 episodes of that series and look at the Star Trek Picard Countdown comic as well, which came out as a companion to that. So once again, thank you for watching. I hope you have a nice day. And as we always say in all these videos, keep reading and keep on trekking.